today. Probably not Wednesday when you're watching this. It's probably Thursday because I try to record one day ahead. So I decided I'd get on here and do a look with you guys. This is the Morphe Manny palette, and I think it's really pretty, so I decided I'd do a look with it. I haven't yet. And so right now I am wearing the Maybelline Matte and Fit Me Poreless Foundation. I'm wearing the Lancome Depeche, I think that's what it's called. Sorry, I feel like this is too high. Depeche all over face powder. It's kind of got a sheen to it. It reminds me, you know, it's similar to the Jaclyn Hill one. And then on my cheeks, I'm wearing the Scott Barnes palette. Concealer is the Urban Decay, the one that came along with the Stay Naked. I don't know if it's called the same thing or not, but that's what it looks like. It's the Stay Naked bottle. Okay, so all over I used Dust Cloud. And I thought today we'd kind of talk about relationships and kind of what kind of relationships you guys have been in and what kind of relationships I've been in. And, you know, I've been in some pretty, really horrific relationships. My worst relationship was pretty physically and mentally abusive. Really physically and mentally abusive. He actually ended up getting incarcerated for what he had been doing to me, which, you know, when you're in a relationship like that, it literally, I think it changes you to the core because you no longer trust anybody, even people the closest to you, because the person that told you that they loved you hurt you. And let's see what color. I think I'm going to use Spellbound, which is kind of like a, okay, so I'll show you really quick what I've been using. So I used this one first, all over the lid, this one in the crease, and I think I'm going to use Spellbound, which is this one. But I don't know yet. I have to kind of look at it. I have to swatch it because it's kind of dark. It's not too bad. These are pretty muted shades. I think I remember saying that in the first impression when I was swatching it. Yeah, it's super soft. Ew, it's so pretty. And it matches my sweater. I feel like those type of relationships really change you, you know. It's like they almost change your entire DNA, because whoever you were before that, you're not anymore. And, you know, it doesn't obviously always start that way. Usually they start out as a really sweet and caring person and someone that you almost feel really lucky to have found. And I know that that's how I felt at first. I was just like, wow, you know, because I was with someone else for about 10 years before this relationship that was not physically abusive. But he was just very detached and was not present in the relationship. And so when I got into this relationship, he was so attentive and so almost suffocating, but I didn't think that at the time. But I saw that as he cared, because in my previous relationship it was the complete opposite. He didn't show any kind of affection or care or anything, right? So I went from one extreme to another. And so I almost felt like, wow, you know, this is what a relationship was supposed to be like. He cares, he, you know, pays attention to me, he's always worried about where I'm at, what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. Which I totally misinterpreted those signs, because those were huge red flags that he was super controlling, right? And but I didn't see it that way. He didn't present it that way. It was, I just care, you know. And then it got to the point where I remember I gave a friend of mine that I'd been friends with for years, a guy friend, a ride. And you know, before this, obviously, it got pretty possessive. Before this particular incident I'm about to talk about, it got very possessive, as far as like he wanted to know where I was at all the time. He wanted to be with me all the time. He would show up to my work just to see what I was doing. If I was talking to any guys, he would get like super mad, that type of stuff. I'm using Scorpio, which is like a kind of like a, oh my gosh, like a bronzy color. So anyways, I had given my friend a ride, and he had dropped his ID in my car, which I didn't know. But I mean, I wasn't really looking. So my boyfriend at the time found that ID and lost his crap. And I just thought it was just going to be like a big, huge fight, you know. And then he was just going to kind of yell at me and go off on me and whatever. Boy, was I wrong. That was the very first time that he ever hit me. He backhanded me in the car when I got in. Had I known that that was what was going to happen, I would have never gotten in the car. But I didn't. I had no clue that that's what he was going to do, because it was literally out of nowhere. Like, he wasn't yelling. He was just kind of asking me, like, why is this in the car? And I told him, oh, I gave my friend a ride, and it must have fallen out of his things. And he was just like, you're a liar, you're cheating, you're doing this, you're doing that. And I was really kind of shocked, because I didn't know why he would think that, because I'd never given him any reason to believe that I would cheat on him, you know. And then, yeah, so he backhanded me in the car, and that was the very, very, very first time that any guy had ever put his hands on me. And so it was almost shocking to the point where I didn't really react. I was like, did that really just happen? Like, did he just really just hit me? And I kind of, I think I lost, I don't know what I did with my eyelash color. Like, I haven't been able to find it, and I don't have another one. Because unlike a lot of YouTubers, how they seem to have backups for everything, I don't do that. Unless it's limited edition, you know for sure it's not coming back. Then I try to get a backup if I really, really love it. Dang it. Oh well, we'll just use mascara without it. I think that's pretty much all I'm gonna do with this look. I think it's really pretty. It turned out nice. So, you know, I was really shocked and kind of didn't really know how to react. And then once it finally hit me what he did, I started to cry, and I just was like in shock. And he wasn't really saying anything, and he just kept saying, because I kept going like this to my lip because he split my lip. And he kept telling me to quit doing that. And I was like, no. I didn't say that, but I just kept doing it. And then came the honeymoon stage, the apologies, and the I'm so sorry, I can't believe I did that, I've never done that before, I was just so upset, just the thought of you with someone else just sent me into a tailspin, like, I'm so sorry, please forgive me. And he was getting ready to drop me off at work because he was using my car because he didn't have one. I sure knew how to pick him. And he wouldn't leave when he dropped me off at work because he was like, at this time I worked at the mall, and so he could actually like sit there with me. I worked at a kiosk in the mall, and so he could sit there with me and nobody would care because I worked by myself at the kiosk, and so my boss didn't know that he was just like lingering. But so he stayed with me, and I think it was almost because he was like afraid of what I was going to do if he left me by myself, like if I was going to call the cops or, you know, what I was going to do, right? So he stayed with me there for probably like a good hour until I calmed down. And then once he left, I broke down again, and one of my friends that worked at the mall, he could tell something was wrong, obviously, because he could tell I'd been crying while my, I don't even like calling him my ex-boyfriend because I hate him that bad. I forgive him for what he did to me, but, so I didn't, you know, he came over to me and he was like, so what's going on? What's wrong? What happened? And he saw my lip, and I told him what happened, and, he was like, oh my gosh, like, what are you gonna do? Like, you should really call the police. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I don't want to send him to jail. Like, he said, you know, it's the first time he's ever done anything like that, and he's not gonna do that again. And that's when it all started, like me making excuses for him, and it just kind of got worse from there. I remember, so I ended up leaving that job not too far, like probably about a year after that. And then there was another time when he was looking for another job, and he didn't have a phone at the time, and so I was at an interview, and interviews don't usually take very long, right? But this interview was like a kind of like a work interview, so they wanted to kind of see if I could do the job while I was there, and then based on how I performed, as whether or not I would get the job, right? So I didn't know that was what was going to happen, and so I was there a lot longer than I had expected, which I was kind of worried the entire time because I knew that he was going to be mad once I got home. I knew it. These mirrors are all annoying me because they're all so big and they're hard to hold while I'm doing this. was going to be mad, but I didn't think he was going to be as mad as he was because I was at an interview. I mean, I was trying to get a job, and so I got the job because I performed really well. And I was like, the whole time I was driving home, I was like really happy, right? I was like, I felt really nice. Like I got the job, and I was really it just felt nice. And I opened the door to go into the house, and I'm excited to tell him, like, I got the job. And before I even got in the house, he kicked me in the stomach so hard that I flew out the front door and landed on the grass. And it's really hard for me to remember kind of what happened because this was so long ago. And there was just so many different incidences like this that they start to all kind of seem like meshed together. So I remember getting up and being scared. So I got in the car and locked myself in. And he started like breaking stuff, like our lawn chairs. He broke one over my car. And so one of our neighbors saw what he was doing and called the police. Right, so the police come, and here where I live, the police, when it's a domestic violence incident, I mean, at least back then, they would send crime victims advocates that would kind of talk to you away from away from the person that assaulted you or hurt you or whatever. And so they sent one of them, so she comes in and they have him outside and they're talking to him, and he's not telling them anything. All he admitted to was breaking the chair, which he didn't realize that was actually something he could be cited for, which was criminal mischief. And I could barely stand because of how he had kicked me in the stomach. And she's like, I know something's wrong. She's like, you need to tell me what happened. And I would not. I just said, we just got into a fight and he just started breaking the chairs. And I don't know why I constantly defended him and didn't press charges like in the beginning. But I just, I denied it, and then I just was like, yeah, nothing happened. He just broke the chair. Well, he got cited for criminal mischief, and I had to go to court for that. Well, after like a while, I mean, I could go on forever talking about like all the different times he did stuff, but after a while, I started to get to the point where I didn't want to take it anymore, and so I would call the cops and I would press charges. Actually, no, I would call the cops and then I would do the dumbest shit and then I wouldn't press charges. And it got to the point where the cops knew us because they'd been to our house so much. And I remember one of them saying, "You're a really good woman, I can tell. Why do you keep on putting up with this, and why do you keep on taking him back? Why do we keep having to come back here?" And I was like, I don't know. And I felt stupid, of course, but I honestly couldn't answer him because I didn't know. It wasn't that because after a while I didn't love him anymore. It was more of like I was afraid to leave type of thing, because he had threatened to like kill me so many times if I did. And so there was this one time this last time, this was the last time. This was the time that got me out of it. He had been working and was sleeping during the day because he was working like a swing shift or something. And I needed to go to the store, and it was my day off from work, and I needed to go to the store, and so I went. I mean, I wasn't going to wake him up and bother him, you know. And I came back, and it had been a couple hours, and my poor little daughter, she had made him some French toast because she really liked to cook. And she made him this French toast, and she put it on a plate with a little note that said, some breakfast for you when you wake up so that you're not hungry. And my daughter at that time, I think she was like 6. But I'm not positive. Well, he wakes up and he's furious that I wasn't there to wake him up. And he slept all day. And oh, sorry, it's hard to talk through. So he gets up. He had sat down at the kitchen table, and then when he realized like what time it was, and he was like, "Where were you?" And I was like, "Oh, I went to Walmart just to buy some things that we needed for the house." And he's like, "Why didn't you wake me up? Like I would want to go with you." And I was like, "Well, because you were asleep. Like I had things to do. I didn't want to wait." And he gets up, and in front of my daughter, he throws the plate of French toast across the room. And then he picks up a chair and he threw it at the stove, which broke the glass, like where you see inside the stove, you know. And he's just kind of like going ballistic. And this is like probably one of the worst times where he's just was completely like losing his shit. And I remember she was terrified, of course, like any kid would be. And she ran and she got my cell phone and she called the police, and he went and he took it from her and hung up. But it had been long enough that she'd been on the phone with them that they were able to figure out where we were. So she goes and locks herself in the bathroom, and he has one of those really long forks, like for a turkey, and he's got it to my neck, and he's like telling me that he's going to kill me. And my daughter comes running out of the bathroom, and she's like, "Leave my mom alone." Oh, this is just such a really hard story to tell. As much as I'm over it, and like I have forgiven him, and it isn't for him. The forgiveness is for me. It's just hard to talk about because my poor daughter had to see it, and this was the first time that she ever witnessed it, and that's why this was the one time. This was what got me out. And so he threw me to the ground and knocked me out. And when I got back up, I realized that he was kind of chasing around the house trying to get the phone from her again. And the cops were already there. So I get up and I go and I answer the door, and he had gone into the kitchen and started packing his things because he thought that I was going to do what I normally do. Ooh. Oh no, I got a highlighter all over me. He thought I was going to do what I normally do, which was just say nothing happened, and they'd let him go. Oh my gosh, I got highlighter in my coffee. Oh well. But for me, that was crossing the line. him going after my daughter in any way. Oh my gosh, this is everywhere. To me was crossing the line. Like, you can do whatever you want to me, but you're not gonna hurt my babies, or scare them. And up until that point, he had enough respect to not do those things in front of my children. Although my children weren't stupid, they knew what was happening. They just had never seen it. So I told the police what he had done, and that he, I just explained everything, the whole situation. And I'm using the Daffodil highlighter. Oh gosh, this is so pretty, dude. You guys have to get this, at least this one. It's extra. This is just so pretty. Oh, I'm having really bad pain in my elbow today. So I explained to them what had happened, and the officer went into the kitchen to get him, and he had realized that this was not going to be like all the other times when he got away with what he was doing. And he was a big guy, okay? This isn't a little guy. He's a big guy. He began to resist. And the only officers that came were a male and a female officer. And when I saw the male and the female officer come in, I thought, this isn't going to be good, because he's going to need another male officer, if not a couple more, to come and help him. Oh my gosh, this is so pretty. I'm using it as an inner corner highlight. So he started resisting arrest, and it got super, super physical. He started fighting with the police, and they got him into the living room where I was sitting with my daughter, and they were like wrestling and fighting him to the ground, and he was trying to get to me on the couch. Like, he was like lunging and like swearing and telling me it's my fault, and you effing be, like, and let's see, he kicked one of the officers in the face, and they tased him 3 times, and he did not go down. That's how big he was. And then by the end of that situation, there was probably about 30 officers in my house, and they were hog tying him and carrying him out. And he really thought I wasn't going to do anything this time. He genuinely really thought that he would be able to talk me out of anything. So he wrote me a letter while he was in jail and told me not to go to court. And that wasn't going to happen, because, like I said, he'd crossed the line by involving my daughter. And even though he'd crossed the line many times, I had a boundary, at least one, and that was my children. And so, long story short, he ended up going to prison. He was sentenced 5 to life, ended up doing 3. And yeah, that was a really long time ago. Sometimes it feels like it was yesterday, but it was a really, really long time ago. And I wish that I had known more about domestic violence, because if I had, I probably would have recognized the early signs of it, and I would have gotten in too deep. And I just the reason I wanted to share this story with you guys is because I know that so many people have gone through this. And check this out. Before I was in this relationship, I was actually a crime victims advocate volunteer. Okay, so this can happen to anybody. And really, really good manipulators and abusers know how to get in your head. Because they don't do it fast. I mean, you don't meet them and then on the first date they smack you. It's slow. It's very, very, very methodical. And yeah. So just know that there's little signs that you should watch for. One of them is, the super controlling, that I'm only like wanting to know where you are because I care, and like I don't want you to have other guy friends because like that's disrespectful to our relationship. Like everyone should be able to have whatever friends they want. It's the like wanting to constantly know where you are, who you're with, what are you doing, why are you going out, you shouldn't be there. Like it's that kind of stuff that you should definitely watch out for, because those are the super red flags that whatever is happening is going to it could eventually escalate into domestic violence. Like, I mean, and no, abuse isn't just physical, it's very mental too. They break you down mentally first, and then, if they're going to get physical, it happens after they've already broken you down mentally, because a strong-minded person isn't going to allow that, right? Like, if you're really strong-minded, you're not going to allow someone to hate you. You're like, excuse me, you're not going to put your hands on me, I'm calling the police, and you're going to jail. Someone that's been broken down starts to think that they deserved that, and that it was okay, and it was this one time, and they're sorry. But I wanted to share my story because I just wanted people to know, and anyone to know, because violence can come both from men and women. Women can also be very physically abusive. It's mainly just so that you guys can understand what to watch out for, because it is so scary once you're stuck in it. So watch out for the beginning signs of it, so that you don't get trapped in a situation that you feel you can't get out of. And if you are in one, there are so many places you can go for help and ask for help. There's shelters, which I know are like the worst option, because they're usually not very nice. Even the women, like domestic violence shelters, I don't know about other states. Here they have some like okay ones, but I know it's just, but I mean, is it really worse than being abused? No. So just don't allow yourself to get to a point where you lose yourself, because they've won, almost at that point. And once they've gotten you there, it's so hard to get out mentally. It took me a really long time afterwards to forgive him and to forgive myself for allowing myself to be abused like that. Like, I would sit there and I would think, how did that happen? Once I was finally mentally out of it and out of his grasp, I could not understand how that happened. Like, my ex from before him was like, dude, that was not you. You would never have let someone do that to you. Like, what happened? And I'm like, dude, he was a master manipulator. He was a narcissist, and he was crazy. and he was really good at making me feel like the things he was doing were my fault. And I don't even know how it was possible that he was able to do that to me, because I'm not a weak-minded person. But he definitely made me different. I'm definitely different than I was before that relationship. It changed me to the core. I don't trust anyone. Yeah, it's pretty scary. Like, I still, I'm in therapy for a lot of different things, but that's one of them. Because although I have forgiven him for what he did, it's forgiving myself for allowing myself to be a victim of that, That's probably pretty hard. And putting my children in that situation is something that I struggle with daily, like the guilt of it. Even though it's been a really long time, it's something that will affect them for the rest of their lives, So yeah, I hope that this wasn't too much of a downer. It wasn't meant to be. I just kind of wanted to talk about it and with you guys, because I know that a lot of people can relate. Anyways, guys, I hope that if you are in a situation like this, that you please seek help. You're not alone, and there are a lot of people out there that want to help and will help you get out of a situation like that. So, please have a great rest of your week, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.